rather than, in fact, through practice, you can really improve your knowledge of theory. And I wonder, Tom, whether you have any comments from your work, I think in Vanillali, is it, or wherever it is that Friendship City you're with?
Our Friendship City is in Vermasse, and so I've got two.
Can you turn on your microphone? We can't hear you.
My microphone is on. Can anyone else hear?
Now we can. Yes, yes.
So my experience in Indonesia, in Timor Leste, is two areas. One is in Vermasse at the high school there, and the second is working with the Faculty of Exact Sciences at UNTL. And
yes.
So I've observed the teacher training in chemistry at UNTL, and
yes.
there's no laboratory. So teachers who learn chemistry at UNTL have absolutely no practical experience, and so when they go out to teach in the high schools, they don't have any concept of getting children to actually do experiments, and you can't actually understand anything about chemistry unless you have practical experiments. So so all of the stuff that we saw that Roberto, I think it was talking about, soil chemistry, for example. Soil chemistry does require some understanding of how you actually analyze soil, do experiments and pick sand up and find out what's in it and so on. So my opinion is that it will require quite a bit of investment in both UNTL and in the high schools on transforming the courses from theory to a much more experimental program. And I'd be very interested to know what happens in the islands, because certainly in Indonesia and Korea and Vietnam, there's a very high emphasis on equipment and experiment. So I don't think good reforms will occur unless people are prepared to invest a lot more in practical stuff. That's my 2 penneth worth, Helen.
Good, thanks. Now I'm just wondering, a couple of other people made some comments. Chat, let me have a look. Judy Atwood, yes. Now, Judy, I know you've got some comments. We've had some discussion about this in the past on Facebook and things like this. And you worked in the ministry in the first 2 cycles reform, so it would be good to get some comments from you. So if you want to unmute your mic. Judy.
Yeah, look, Helen, I really think you're being too ambitious. And I speak from my understanding from my 2 years in Timor, and also from my many years as an educator in a developed country. And I know personally, as a teacher, how hard it is to implement change. So I really think, and I have been involved in just very small project-based learning, and it is very, very difficult to do. I really think it's something that might be a goal for not to be lost, but for a further reform. And I know how hard it is for teachers to come to grips, if we're going to come to grips with it in any kind of meaningful way, with a new curriculum, with new teaching materials. And we don't have teachers that are used to putting in the time in preparation that we do in developed countries. They're not able to talk to their colleagues like we can. Whenever we implement a reform in Queensland, It's always followed up within service for every teacher, and it's still nowhere near enough. So
Right.
I'm speaking as a practitioner.
Yes. Can I
Be practical.
can I just invite Suzanne Owen to say something, because you're doing work in Kiribati, is it?
I am.
And I'm really looking at the very small countries, because small and big countries have a different set of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah.
I've been, I was in Timor Leste for 2 years, and at the time when the new curriculum, as it was called, National Curriculum Basic Education, I was working in the basic education, the PLMP program, and that basically was to get all of the school principals at that stage in the years 1 to 9, so that the principals led school-based professional development, got the teachers to use all those pedagogical approaches that were part of the national curriculum, established teacher peer learning groups or PLCs, do more observation in the classroom, get teachers to give each other observation and feedback, get school action plans happening, so that the new curriculum was truly embedded at the school level. So while the ministry was doing some training as each year level of the basic education happened, there was never any follow-up, and we know what happens. So you bring people together, you do training, and quite often it was train the trainer model, and then no follow-up. So what we were trying to do was to say, okay, and we'll work with the school leaders long-term, including bringing them together for workshops on a regular basis, and sending them back with an action plan, and it's something they had to do. And we had coaches, local young people. We were working in the rural areas, and now I think half of the schools were in the program and half were not. And it's been, ACER's been in there, they're doing a longitudinal study, and I think they're up to, out of the 13 municipalities, there's about 10 now. Of course, he's not one of them. Forgotten which ones aren't, but it has been shown to have made a big difference. And I'm talking, however, of course, up to year 9. All right. I've been 3.5 years now in Kiribati. I lived there long term, apart from now. And again, we've implemented a model that goes year 1 to 12, because it's a smaller country, 120,000 people across very, very remote islands. And we're doing it with all primary and secondary schools. Similar kind of model to what we did in Timor-Leste, basically getting the school principals and deputies, and in the secondary schools, getting the HODs, the head of department, into the leadership program. Yes. And I think that's the key. We know in the secondary schools, you've got to get your head of departments in on every subject area, and you've got to get them seeing themselves as a leader, as well as the principal and deputy, and planning as a team of people on a whole school level about, these are our expectations. There will be classroom observations. The principal will do it, the deputy will do it, and the head of department will do it at a very specialised level, appropriate. And again, bringing those school leaders together every few months with coaches. Again, we have local coaches there. And we, in fact, have had a coach based on many of the islands, so they can work intensively with them as a whole group of school leaders, and go school by school with the principals and deputies and HODs, and working in the classrooms of individual teachers. And I'm now working in Tuvalu, and we're just setting up, that's an even smaller country, we're setting up that same model. In fact, this week we're on it. So we're in the first workshop, because people like me can't be there, we're afar. We've developed the program through Zoom, and now our local education department people are conducting the program themselves, with us sitting on the Zoom some of the time, but basically very big capacity building. It will be the first workshop of a series, with a follow-up process through Facebook, through email, through whatever we can do to keep them working as a group of school leaders, like a PLC online, until we can get there and do the school visits. But of course, the local education department and Australian government team, locally employed, will be out on the island when they can, when the ships allow. So going back to, I'm knowing Timor-Leste, like the countries I'm working in now, very little science equipment in the secondary schools. I can see the issue there. I was in Papua, Indonesia, prior to all of these experiences, same sort of problem. I think the reason why everything is so theoretical is because if you don't have the resources, you can't do it practically. That's the issue. Yeah, I think it's got to come alongside of resources. Huge job to get the secondary people in any country I've worked in to make changes. They love to lecture, but you know, and so that's why you've got to get that whole school approach with the ministry's support. So the ministry goes and backs it up. And they did when we did the basic education. They were out there in the schools, looking themselves, you know, making sure that the message was very clear that this was an expectation. If you were in this program, that you as a school leader were actually carrying out the activities. So, but yeah, that's probably enough from me.
Thanks very much. No, I think that's interesting to see what you can do in a small place like Kiribati and Tuvalu. Now, I can see my colleague Jimmy is online, and Jimmy works in the another piece of reform in Timor on the multilingual early literacy program. Jimmy, are you there? Do you want to say something? Jimmy, can you hear us? I better look at the chat.
He's unmuted now.
He's unmuted.
Yeah.
Jimmy, are you there?
Give him a little second.
I'll have a look at the chat. Are there any other people who've made a comment who want to?
Still no other comment.
Jimmy, are you there? Can you want to say something? It would be good if you could, but you're recording. Oh, we should have recorded it from the beginning, shouldn't we? Gosh.
It's not from the beginning, it's from.
I'll just make some comments while we're waiting for Jimmy. I think, yes, from what Susan has said, it does show the great importance of working with the school leaders. And in response to Judy's comment, you're right in the general point. Of course, reform is always difficult and people would prefer not to do it. But Timor Leste is in danger of being left behind every other country in the world almost, because we don't introduce computers in Timor until year 10. Now, in most parts of the world, the whole idea that secondary education is about learning facts and doing an exam like we do in Timor went out because everybody's got access to a computer and knows how to find the facts. They know how to access databases. They know how to research, even searching on Google, although it's harder to find something on Google than it used to be when it was a much smaller thing. And this is why we have emphasised IT and libraries must be in place before anything like project-based learning will be successful. Similarly, principals have to be on board and be advocates for it. Also, we will set up teachers' subject associations. Now, this is partly why we made contact with people like Tom and John Webb in the Chemistry Association in Australia, because although there may no longer be a subject called chemistry in the curriculum, there will be chemistry in all of the units, possibly all of them, and geology and physics and sociology and economics. One of the problems faced by the current curriculum is that students in year 10, 11 and 12 only do natural science or social science. They can't do both. And you see this results in people who've had a completely science-based education who don't know a thing about policy making. People who've done agriculture don't know a thing about sociology or psychology of farmers. because they haven't done any social science. And this artificial divide, there are too many, I believe, too many artificial divides in the current secondary system. We've got the divide between the private and the public schools. We've got the divide between the technical vocational schools and the general secondary schools. Now, you know, that leads to, I think, an inadequate education on both sides of the divide. You've got the old public schools that are so run down now that nobody who's got a degree themselves would send their kids to a public school, and teachers don't want to teach there. The whole, you in a sense, you've got to, like the problem of food will only be solved in Timor by recruiting a different sort of person to being a farmer. You've got to begin to recruit a different sort of person who's highly motivated to be a teacher. And I should mention the Jimmy, you want to say something there? I see you're putting up a comment. Jimmy, are you there? One of the
It's internet.
oh, the internet, yes. We're having a lot of internet problem.
Multilingual education.
That's right. Now the multilingual schools, which are the ones where they teach in an Indigenous language initial literacy and then move over to Tetum and then Portuguese and then English, they are actually producing people who are very good at languages, not surprisingly. And yet there's an alternative model that is put forward by the Portuguese called the cafe schools. And I don't think there is enough data available to really tell which has following the best strategy for getting people highly literate in you know, the 4 languages or the 3 languages of working national languages and working languages, so that this becomes a big issue, and we do need research. One of the reasons that we're probably having this session here today is because I recommended to the minister that people be encouraged to study comparative education. So we've set up a comparative education study group here, and some of the people on this who've come to this OSIUS conference have come through that. Actually, not many of them are here in this particular group. I can see Legia here, though. Legia from Catalpa. I don't know if you would like to say something. But we do need to have more data and information and libraries, proper library in the Ministry of Education, where all the data, all the reports that have been done on education in Timor, they're nowhere to be seen in the one place in Dili, anywhere. So the National Library has been delayed and no collection development's been done for the National Library. So a lot of documents have disappeared already. So part of our reform also is to bring people into that sort of a structure, bring teachers and students who want to study postgraduate education. There are many of them who've done postgraduate education in various parts of the world, but sadly, their knowledge is not being able to be fed back into the Timorese system, unfortunately. So this is what we're trying to do with a bit of this. Now, would anyone else like to make any comments? Let me read the chats and see who else.
Can you access the chat?
Oh, yes, Jimmy is apologising because his internet isn't working. Since most of the students in basic education that's right, he works in the areas where Tetum is not a widely spoken language.
You want to ask Lizzie about those companies role in the ICT.
Legia, are you there? Can you get your internet to work? Because Roberto wants to ask you a question.
Yes,
Legia,
I'm here.
do you want to say something?
Yeah, I agree with the ICT introduction of technology to the high school level. Even possible like digital literacy in the early level, because
Yes.
yeah, that's I think it's important for the students. And now, Dr. Helen, like, yeah, you say library also very important. Like you couldn't find any resource in the, because we don't have existing library.
Yes.
And then now we have this ICT consultant, the one that developing ICT policy for Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport, Timor Leste.
Now, who's that? I didn't know there was such a person. Is there?
Yeah, from
Who is
Philippines.
it?
They're from Philippines. They're coming a couple of months ago doing a
Oh, they did a shocking report. They did a
Yes.
terrible report.
It was approved by the previous minister,
Yes.
by Dulce, but
They
then
left out all these big issues we want the ministry to decide on, like what age should kids start using computers, or, you know, how do we install an internal email system in the ministry? How do we install a learning management system? Totally ignored by that group.
it is very good.
Sorry.
Following the national strategic plan of education in Timor Leste, the one that wants to have computer at least in the school levels. Now we have computer, but in like cluster levels. Some cluster have, some cluster don't have, but not in the school level. So they want to make sure the infrastructure is there, but it's also quite ambitious, as they want to have lots of systems like and also wants to have engineering or developer in the ministry. I don't think this is quite, it's a bit ambitious, you can say like that.
We don't know.
So yeah, for the reform curriculum, I think it's a very good idea to introduce but this is, we talk about digital literacy, or we talk about computing in a higher level, like they can start coding or doing database, or they just understanding how to turn on and off, doing Word document for them.
Our idea is that the subject currently called technology as multimedia is really a computer literacy subject. Everybody needs a computer literacy subject to be able to use computers for the purpose of their own study, but also for the purpose of jobs they may get. And it's astounding, you know, we hear employers complain that graduates of the National University of Timor Leste cannot send an email. They don't know how to set up an email account. But the other thing is, in the technical vocational schools, there is a specialisation where that is not just computer literacy, that is actually learning to be a technician. That's learning to do some, but we also don't have, I think, in Timor, a proper idea of what the different careers in the IT field are. You know, there are systems managers, there are software writers, there are different specializations and careers. And I don't think anyone much, maybe apart from Abel Pires de Silva and, you know, people who've done overseas postgraduate study really understand this. And but it needs to be, and Timor did not implement the recommendations of the World Summit on the World Summit on the information economy, which is a great pity.
Yeah. And also that's something
Leo would like
Jimmy
to
said that the infrastructure is in this current ministry's priorities. So hopefully that the library
Yes.
will be part of this and including ICT.
Look, this is a good point that Jimmy's making, because when we had the change of government, I maybe shouldn't say this, but I detected the new minister's not quite as keen about curriculum reform as the previous minister was, but he's made speeches where he says he's in favour of introducing the internet into all schools, or at least, you know, and secondary schools is where it's taught currently. So that seems to indicate to me that we need to emphasise those areas, because they are part of the scaffolding needed before the true curriculum reform comes in. We're going to build up the scaffolding and have people trained, have librarians, have every school have a good place where not only where a computer lab, but a library where they can go and learn to search databases, you know, in preparation for possibly going to university, because the university lecturers are tearing their hair out because they are getting people in the university courses who don't have the first clue about how to study. So anyone else want to make a comment?
Yeah,
Suzanne?
I'll make a comment. I think one of the issues, of course, for Timor-Leste is when you search the internet, you find a lot of English information.
Yes.
But whether you find a lot of Portuguese language information or good quality work from the Indonesian side, which, you know, here we've covered the languages. So I think this is, you know, it's not something we can really grapple with here, but it is an issue. So I hear what you're saying, the infrastructure. And one of the things that struck me, even when I was in Timor-Leste 4 or 5 years ago, we were able to give every school leader who did our program a tablet technology. And this was groundbreaking. And what was interesting, we weren't working in Dili, is that they were uploading their data. We were testing students' literacy and numeracy tests on a regular basis. They were able to upload their minutes from their PLGs, their peer learning groups. They were able to upload observation data. And even if at their particular small school, by the time they walked home or took their motorbike home, so the infrastructure in terms of internet is actually very good. And it's probably improved more since I left. So you know, some of the scaffolding is there.
Look, there are still schools where they've got no computers, and the only way students can pass the exam is to memorise the textbook, having never put their fingers on a computer. It's really very sad. It's really.
Yeah, I agree. So what I'm saying is some of the infrastructure is actually there, even if the hardware isn't. Some of the infrastructure is actually there.
True.
Also now, Timor has a thing called TIC. TIC is a fibre optic cable, government-owned internet server. Now, ministries can use it, government departments can use it, but very sadly, Ministry of Education has not yet started using TIC, and you would have thought it would have been one of the first ministries. So there is a big gap with people who should be talking to each other, not talking to each other, I'm sorry to say. We're trying to bring Roberto de Sousa of TIC to the ministry next week, in fact. And I just hope there are going to be some people there to talk to him, because this conversation needs to happen. Timor, too many schools are getting ripped off by the free private providers, you know, the commercial bodies, and they don't have to be, because TIC is there. And once the fibre optic cable under the sea connects Australia with Timor, it will be able to be rolled out everywhere, but people need to be ready for it. Now,
right up to Dr. Suzanne's comment. For basic education and high school, it's kind of the same. They don't have computer in the school level, but the difference is basic education have this ALMA program or PLMP program. The one that they give tablet. I'm working on that for 4 years. Yeah. They give tablet to school leaders. So they're doing classroom observation in the field. They're sending, they are recording literacy and numeracy exam for student grade 1 and grade 2, which is now already in 10 municipalities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, also ministry training do school leaders on how to use tablet devices on digital literacy. So it's kind of like a bit improvement in the basic education level. But
no, that was part of the program. So that's something we introduced, giving a tablet to each school leader, training them up, getting them to use data, send us the real-time data. It could even be that the primary schools, the basic education, is ahead of the secondary because of that aspect.
And we have coaches, which is some of them are ministries people, we call it national mentors, and then some of them are locally hired, we call it local mentors, and educational which is mixed with international people coming here to mentoring those school leaders. So
Can I ask? Can I ask whether anyone has had experience of Moodle as a learning management system? And what you think of it, or whether you think there's anything that's any better, but yeah, the UN and a lot of universities around the world use it. So it seems to be emerging as the market leader or whatever they call it.
Yeah, the Teachers College in Kiribati, which is the main training organisation as well, both for the pre-service and for the CPD, the continuous professional development.
Oh, yes.
And that's where in Kiribati, that's where our leaders program is based. They've just introduced teacher registration in Kiribati, and now all the school teachers, many of whom only have a certificate, are being required to be registered to do ongoing professional development through the Teachers College, and they've got the chance to do advanced diploma in teaching or advanced diploma in school leadership. And they're using Moodle, and we're in fact exploring at the moment OpenSIS, because they've got Moodle for the curriculum aspects. They've got Excel spreadsheets for their results, student results.
Oh, yeah.
This is long term. And so, yeah, we're trying to look at maybe something like OpenSIS to start to bring all of these systems together and have an integrated system, and get feedback from students from the courses as well. That's currently happening through SurveyMonkey. So we're just exploring some other options in Kiribati.
Oh, now that's interesting. You talk OpenSIS. Now, is this an open source free software for what? Is it?
Yeah,
Does it replace Word? I mean, I'll just tell you, we have a problem that in Timor, most people who use Microsoft software use pirated Microsoft software.
I know.
And
yeah,
they can't afford to buy. And Microsoft doesn't treat Timor as a proper country and has no office here.
Right.
So we're thinking of trying to put open source into the curriculum.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're advocating using pirated software. Yeah,
I don't think you can do that, and you won't end up. Lygia will be able to comment on this, or some of the IT people online, but you know, we just don't see that as a system, a good system. It's not reliable. It's all right for small scale stuff. I think it's going to cost something like $10,000 to get the system in place. If something like OpenSIS, a proper system in place with all the training and all of those sort of things. But if that's a one-off cost, we think it's worth it to get a really good system, which includes both the pre-service and also this expanding range of CPD, which is going to be a requirement for registration, and higher courses for teachers up to the advanced, and school leaders up to the advanced diploma level, as well as pushing into the future. Kiribati Teachers College is going for ECAP, which is the Pacific accreditation of their programs and their institutions.
Right.
Yeah. Lygia, do you want to comment on the OpenSIS and some other database approaches?
Lygia, are you there still?
I'm here, but I'm not.
Do you know about these bits of software?
I'm not sure about this OpenSIS. I lost you a little bit.
What?
Oh, did you? Sorry.
OpenSIS, is it?
Yeah, OpenSIS.
What about things like Ubuntu and Linux? Are they out of date? Are they finished? Are they?
They don't talk about them anymore.
People still using Ubuntu or Linux for operation system, but it's kind of like, I don't know, to teach as an open source, but I don't know if it's easy to teach. Are we talking about this for high school curriculum?
Well, yes, we're talking about them for now. Roberto should be engaging in this conversation. He tells me we shouldn't use brand names in the curriculum like Word and PowerPoint. We should use word processing and spreadsheet and slideshow, because there are other ones, you know. And you know, Microsoft doesn't treat Timor very well, although I think it funded your course, did it? There's the funny company, IT companies do funny things. That's so.
Linux operation system is, I know, one of the subject of computer science in UNTL, and I have like doing some question to some of the students. It's not that easy for them with their background, with less how you call computer experience. So don't know about applying it for high school, but for spreadsheet and things like that, like Microsoft product spreadsheet or presentation, it should be easy to learn for students. And even in the ministry, we are teaching some of the ministry stuff like focal point on a database. We are using Metabase open source Metabase software.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's also
Now, that just reminds me, can I ask another question? We would like to make sure that all the students in the communications and IT subject learn touch typing. Is there a good program for teaching touch typing, or anyone who does it well that you know of, Legia?
I have no idea, sorry.
They don't, do they do this in Kiribati, Suzanne? Because if you're going to learn, you know, to use a computer, you're going to learn Word, you might as well learn touch typing, because then you'll save years of your life, you know, in that all the documents you produce, you'll be able to do them faster. I did a touch typing course in 1971, and I'm so pleased I did.
Yes,
This is for the old typewriters.
Yeah, I'm from the same background as you, Helen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there isn't actually much computing in the schools in Kiribati, but when the people go to the Teachers College, it's in the last couple of years, it's become quite high tech. The Teachers College, they've got computer labs and all of those sort of things. Everything's expected to be typed by the, you know, on computer generated assignments and so on. So basically, I don't think they actually teach them touch typing, but they certainly are teaching them to use, you know, technology to laptops and so on. And like I said, there are computer labs available for the students, the Teachers College students. But up until that point, I wouldn't say there's probably a lot happening in the schools. In fact, probably Kiribati, in terms of those things, including the infrastructure, is behind Timor Leste. Timor Leste would be ahead.
Really?
Yeah,
God.
Timor Leste, in my experience, is, in terms of some of its infrastructure, is ahead of some of the other small countries. Yeah.
That's a bit of a worry to hear that.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, has anybody got suddenly? Roberto, Leo, Margarita, do you want to say something?
About this.
Yeah, come and sit here.
You said computer.
We can.
Thanks.
We should ask whether anyone else has any other questions.
Hello. Yeah. Also important that we want to talk about the SDG. It's part of the national curriculum framework that we want to raise this concept to change, to reform the existing curriculum in Timor Leste, because so far, when the exchanging of the government, the previous one and now the current one, it looks like there is no priorities on the curriculum reform, especially how to bring this SDG as part of the curriculum reform in Timor Leste. And some people in this, especially the new minister, is not really understand the concept on how to bring this SDG, the 21st century skills into one concept in order to build a good curriculum concept in Timor Leste. And it's important that the curriculum reform is not, it is not waiting for the longer time to reform. Some people say that it is not necessary to reform the secondary school reform curriculum in Timor Leste, and SDG is something else that is not seen that is part of the important things in Timor Leste. So I think maybe some of you, maybe Tom or Jimmy also mentioned about that. That's important in Timor Leste. This is one of the part that is also reflected in the national development goals for 2030. But in reality, this concept it seems not appearing. So we need to discuss about these things maybe.
Yeah, this is why we've got to have more seminars.
Yeah.
We'll have some more.
Yeah.
Zoom. Roberto, do you want to say a few final words? Yes.
Right. I just give few comments on the ICT plan or ICT policy that initiated by Minister of Education, right, by the consultant. I can see in the plan they want to build up the sophisticated system, but one essential part of meeting is the who is going to use the systems, how to use the systems. Teachers in the schools, students in the schools, we have to target them first. Yeah, we have to start with the simple one. We deploy computer laboratory in the schools, because the reform program for technology multimedia already happened in 2012. And it requires a facility to support that. But till this moment, after 8 years, we still can't find computer lab in general secondary schools in Delhi. We don't want to talk about the districts. Let's talk about Delhi. Nothing in the schools. So how can we start all those sophisticated systems without recognizing what current problems we face years ago, still not solved yet? That's what we need to take into account. And also the sustainability of the program, the maintenance, the personnel. Those are very basic things that we need to take care of first. I think this is the last comment for me. Thank you.
You want to start? Come and ask.
I'm sorry, Helen and everybody. I'm going to have to go on to my next thing.
Yes,
next
I'm sorry.
activity.
I think now when's the next Dulce thing? Is that on? May already be over. I don't know. They're having a general get together. So look, thank you everybody. I think we better draw this to a close. But thank you.
Can I just say one thing?
Oh, Judy, yes.
Judy. Just quickly on the computer labs.
Yes.
As well, you need computers so that you can have 2 or maybe 3 computers in each classroom on need, because you don't do computers for a whole lesson. Computers are a very important tool that you access as part of your lesson plan. So just build that in as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right. Well, yes, but if we're going to move towards portfolio-based learning where students are judged by what they've produced, written, broadcast films they've made, etc., they do need to spend a fair bit of time having a computer where they can produce their stuff by year 12.
And speaking as a science teacher, there's nothing better than being able to add that data, get the students to put their data into that computer as they generate it.
Oh, yes, yes. No,
Yeah,
I'm
so
not.
that's the practical. I'm looking at the practical everyday use of a computer. I'm not denying that other use. And I know that if you have too many classes locked in, you're going to need more than one computer room. I worked at a large high school a number of years ago, and my God, was it hard to get into a computer room if you didn't need it every week. If you needed it at that time every week, you could slot it in the beginning of the year. If you wanted to do it for a research program, that was a casual slot in, and it was hard to do. So you need to look at how many computer labs are you going to need for a particular size.
Well, I think, but there will also be computers in libraries for people to do research, you know, that can, look, I think we're getting into too much detail.
Yeah,
here
no,
now.
I'm just saying plan for that, that's all.
Yeah, that's right.
one lab in each school will not solve the computer problem.
Oh, no, look, I fully agree. Yes. And you need to have the technicians to look after them too, which, yes.
Absolutely essential. So you've got lots of jobs coming up.
And Helen, let's not forget that
Tom.
Our experience in Vamase is that the school is extremely dusty and so on, and computers don't actually last very long in the conditions of many schools. So you need to take that into account as well.
No,
and the rooms get extra hot with all the computers running.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, you see, we'll have people doing our subject on renewable energy, and they can, in year 12, maybe start thinking about putting some of their knowledge into practice on these things, because the idea of the practice is real world problems facing Timor that students will address. So and hopefully when you're in Timor next, Tom, we can go up to Vamase and have a look at your schools there. And now, which reminds me, I've now got a professional version of Zoom, so I can hold meetings anytime. I do plan to hold some with, both the comparative education group here in Dili and the other group, the one that's got lots of Australians in it. Oh, that's the AITA Special Interest Group on Education. Because once people start coming back to Timor from Australia, I'd like to see some of the friendship cities working more closely with the ministry and with the libraries. Now, Margarita, on always about teaching the reading habit. If students had the reading habit and wanted to get books and read them all the time, education would be a very different thing. So we need to keep all these things together, and friendship cities, I know, can be very valuable, have been in SWI in building a magnificent school library and community library. So anyway, look, thanks very much, everybody who's still here, and apologies for our appalling problem at the beginning. I'm going to have to go and buy a new computer. I really am. And Jimmy, sorry we couldn't hear from you, Jimmy, but I can see we've got some good written comments from you. And next time we'll have one of these meetings informally, quite separate from the OSIUS conference, and people can talk on specific topics. If any of you would like to do a presentation, for example, to a group in both Timor and with people in Australia as well, that would be excellent. So thank you. Obrigado, Barak.
Obrigado.
Everybody.
Obrigado, Barak.
So
Bye. Thanks, Helen.
very much. Thanks very much for attending, everybody. It's been good.
See ya.
Yes, we'll see you. Now, leave. No, I'm not. I can leave, can't I? Because who's the one?